to midah ha'hei le'hechzik la'ad apo. Just refresh your memory. We're learning about the midos of Hashem, which are normally Hashem, K'racham, V'chanun, Erech HaPayim, V'rav Chesed. Those are the 13 midos of Hashem, and they're makbil, they're parallel in Sefer Micha, where Micha spoke about the same 13 midos in a little bit of a different order, of Mikel Kamocha. And the Arizal says, I just want to point this out, the Arizal says, why did Micha have to reinvent the wheel? Moshe Rabbeinu already said, Hashem, Hashem, K'racham, V'chanun. Actually, Hashem said, Hashem, Hashem, K'racham, V'chanun. So why did Micha have to change the language? What was, why improve on Shakespeare, Lahavdil? This is the way Hashem said it, why go further? So the Arizal explains that the Hashem, Hashem, K'racham, V'chanun are the midos Hashem cajole. And the Micha, in his Devora, understood the midos Hashem b'nister, meaning these are not the obvious midos of Hashem. The chiddush of it is that to do the midos of Hashem b'galui is b'galui. Ba'hu rachum avata tiyarachum. Okay, so have rachmanus if nachayid. But here we have a deeper insight into the midos of Hashem, and the deeper insights also machayev us as Tzelem Elikim, that we have this koach to emulate Hashem even in the pnimius hadavar, which is far more demanding. So Devora wrote a sefer not on the Yud Gimel midos of Moshe Rabbeinu, but on the Yud Gimel midos of Micha, which is an extremely demanding, actually almost impossible limud, except the limud's okay, but the doing it is the hard thing. And, but the point is that apparently this is our koach. That's what we have to keep in mind. Lo hefezik la'ad apo, zu midah acheres, nu midah, the fifth midah, which is called lo hefezik la'ad apo, which simply translates as he doesn't stay angry forever. Hashem doesn't stay angry forever. We find Hashem gets angry. A number of times in the Torah, Hashem gets angry. Moshe Rabbeinu got angry. Egel Azav, Hashem got angry. That's the whole Yud Gimel midos came from the Egel. Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchos. It was Kilo Akas, Chorban Beis HaMikdash. There are many times that HaKadosh Baruch Hu seems to be angry. But what's important to remember is that even though there was Egel Azav, and even though there was a Chorban Beis HaMikdash once, twice, we're still here, right? We're still here. So what that means is, why are we still here? Like, let's speak, if you get thrown out of the house, you're out of the house. But what's the answer is, lo hefsek la'adapo. He doesn't stay angry. We have to learn it deeply, but it doesn't stay angry. Which I believe, just as an introduction, tells us something about that anger to begin with. Like there's an anger where like I'm so angry that I'm going to kill you, right? I just don't ever talk to me again. That's one kind of an anger. That's an anger we're familiar with. It's just like, stay out of my life. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's anger is an eternal, by definition. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is eternal.
He never changes.
Never changes. So it tells you. So what's the lumdus here, or Moshe? It tells you that if he never changes, Gilui Milsa Mafreya, that the nature of the anger was l'chatchila different. It's eternal, but we thought your anger was lo'ad. Kamash Malan, that even the anger that was then was not lo'ad, it was not forever. So that tells you that the anger was a different type of anger, maybe with a different kavanah. So it makes it a little easier, I think, because what we're saying is not get over it, but don't get into it to begin with, meaning that there's a certain kind of anger, I believe this is the pshat, there's a certain kind of anger, not that you should get over, that's hard, but there's a certain kind of anger which you should never get into, and then the anger which you do have, if you do have some kind of an anger, should be a certain type of anger. So what we're doing now is, to dream the impossible dream, is to actually not just temper the anger, but the whole mahus of the anger has to be a godly type of anger if we're to get angry to begin with. I mean, humans get angry. It's
for purpose of correcting.
At least this human gets angry.
We also get annoyed. We also get annoyed.
Annoyed. It's on your nerves.
Kind of anger.
Nerves. Nervim. Like, right. It's almost like a physiological reaction, to something. Okay, so like we're here to be speaking lashon hara is also a physiological reaction. I saw just Agav, the great Hasidic Rebbe Reb Simcha Bunim. He says that he asks this. He says, "Why is it that when people get angry they shout? Like, what's the connection here? You get angry, close your eyes, open your eyes, chuckle. Like this is an interesting. Like, why is it that we shout?" So he asked his Talmidim, asked his Hasidim, like, why do we shout when we get angry? So one said, well, like you lose control, so you start shouting. I don't know. There are all kinds of different answers. The Rebbe said, that, want to know why we shout? Because when you get angry at somebody, your lave and their lave grow very, very far apart, and the only way that lave can hear you is by screaming. So it sounds like a Hasidic art. It's like so emes, like we're so sure that like there's such a richuk that takes place. So when you find yourself shouting, that means that you're rachok. Like it's a very there's a great distance over here. So now you stop and think for a second. What's with that distance? What's up with that distance? Is it right? Is it wrong? So it could be that the nature of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's anger, and all of us could think of cases of the Chumash, in the Tanakh, where Kadosh Baruch Hu got angry. The nature of Kadosh Baruch Hu's anger is not a shouting anger. It's not an anger where there's a richuk. It's an anger of this is the hanhaga that has to be at this time for whatever reason. We'll learn about it, but it's not an anger of it's not a shouting match. Like we're screaming across the mountain, like everybody's screaming at each other. So that's already like a big siman that this is not the right thing. Once you're screaming, it's already not the right thing. I'm looking around here. I can't imagine anybody screaming. No, you look at people. They say, "You would scream." It's hard to imagine people scream, but we all scream. Well, yeah, like you lose it. It's like it's really a scary thing. I think, no, like lose it.
So is the godly anger more like a parent with a child? Like if the parent has to get angry in order to convey a message, like so you have a few seconds think, okay, now I'm going to get angry, so
that would be right. Now, does that come with shouting or not? If it is, it's pretend shouting. Let's say, right. Because this is what angry people do. This is what I'm going to do. This is a high madrega because, like as Biddy says, it's like a nervous reaction. It's not so pashut to you're fighting chemicals here. Horror. So zu mida acheret she'afilu ha'adam machzik bechet. Even if a person does a chen, also not just does a chen, machzik bechet is a sinner. He continues to do his machzik. It become a lifestyle. Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu machzik af. You would think that the midah keneged midah would be that a Kadosh Baruch Hu, you're machzik, I'm machzik. Machzik means you stick to it. Like this is like chazaka, right? You're machzik, even if a person's machzik b'chet, not that I slipped, but I'm machzik b'chet, so Kadosh Baruch Hu, not that I'm angry, I should be machzik b'af. I'm angry and I'm going to stay angry at you, not just for you, but for your children, your grandchildren, for all future generations. Be machzik, and even if he does stick with it for a while, it's been 2,000 years since we have a basic Mikdash. Loilad, it's not forever. The reason why we're still hoping for Mashiach is because of this mitzvah, lo hechzik la'ad apo. We know he doesn't stay angry forever.
Is that to say that he's right? He's angry for 2,000 years, or he's not angry anymore? We're just not ready yet.
Angry. Elef shonim beinecha ki yoyim esmol ki yavar. It's just a couple of minutes of anger.
Hashem is angry on every chet.
So we have to understand anger. We have to understand what the.
What have to do with the egel, that we're still, every tzar that comes is a bit of the egel, the anger of the egel, slowly releasing.
Okay.
But that's something else.
It says the Beit HaMikdash
Well,
is destroyed.
it might be something else. It might be the same thing. But let's just take it. Let's just take it I'll tell you something funny. Like on Friday night, if you were here, so I was quoting the New Testament, Acts 15. So, right? Anybody was here? Okay, so like I read the New Testament. I'm a shikol baki in it actually. I should know Shas. Hashem should help me to know Shas, but because I once gave a course in the New Testament, and why Jews don't hold of the New Testament. So in order to do that, you have to read it. This is the mistake if we're not reading. But it's interesting. Just have an interesting thing. The book of Acts, which was written by Luke, is Kishmo Kenhu, Acts, Meisim, Acts. It's a book of, it's very fascinating. It's the closest thing to like Gemara, because it's a pilpul chaverim of the apostles, Imam Shimon Zichram, as to what's the Meisim that we should do now? Like, okay, now we're Christians, right? So what should we do? Should we do bris milah? Should we not do bris milah? Like what are we supposed to do? It's all machlokas. If is this a new Judaism? Like Judaism is gone, or is this Judaism for the goyim? They should do the Zion mitzvahs. I know machlokas in those talmidim of Yeshu Hanoitzri, the machlokas. If I get carried away, I'm going to start teaching New Testament, so I've got to control myself. But it's one of the studim there is that we had the bris with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we did have a covenantal relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but Klal Yisrael blew it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu destroyed the Beis Mikdash not once but twice. Put us into galus and finished. Like time for something new. So that was the Shlit'a of James.
They're always quoting that against us.
Yeah. That's really become the Christian, even though that's not the maskana of the parak. It's not la halacha, but that's like the time for. So I was just I came home from shul Friday night, so. My wife said, "What'd you talk about?" As I was talking about Acts 15, so we have I'm explaining to her. So she said, like where do they have the chutzpah to pretend to know that the bris of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with Klal Yisrael is over? So I said, look, they hold that we did Averis, and you forfeit the relationship, and listen, I'm sticking up for we forfeited the relationship, and we're out of here. So my wife said, it's tak emes. This is clear. So what's like we're saying this is a Muslim. This was written by Luke. Nishmas was, but was this written by the pshat is that this was their toes. That's all I want to say with this whole. Their toes was that yes, there was a galus, and yes, there was an anger, but it wasn't the type of anger that you have. Like, this is the mistake. It wasn't the type of anger which, like, we're divorced. That's it. It was the type of an anger that a father has with a child. It's a different type of anger. So what's going on over there, to give them the benefit of the doubt, is that it was a misunderstanding of the galus. We know that lachon, you're angry, lachon mipnei chatoenu galinu me'artzeinu v'nisrachachnu me'ad maseinu, etc. Ve'ein lanu beis habechira, ve'ein lanu beis hamikdash. We know all that, but we also know that somewhere in your heart, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're still there. We know that the nature of the anger is an anger, and we know this, lo hechazik la'adapo. So this Nakuta is not just like theologically, like we can look at history and see HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a whole relationship. It talks about the whole relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. Lo hechazik la'adapo. It's a different nature. That the anger is of a different type of an anger than any kind of an anger that we're used to when we speak in English in the vernacular about anger. Completely different ma'isa, completely different thing altogether. Not connected. So what is it? V'machzik lo la'ad. So what does he do? Yivatel ka'asai. He's mevatel his kas. Afilu shelo yashuv adam, even when there's no tshuva. Now this is very delicate and even dangerous ground that we're walking on here. So let's just be careful. Not a good time to fall asleep, because what this means is, like, we know that Kol HaKadosh Baruch Kol Omer. What am I going to say? Kol Omer. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Vatrin Hu Mevatrin Lo Min HaShamayim. Right? You're not allowed to say it. You know, I can't tell you how many people, you know, I've talked to over the years, and I'm sure you have also, like that you know, people that grew up from, went through a Holocaust. You know, who can judge? I have my own relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like, don't worry about me. Right? Okay, so what comes to mind? Kol Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mevatrin Hu Mevatrin Lo Min HaShamayim. This is something asur la'agid, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mevater. But here we're saying, so, like, let's be careful here. It doesn't mean that he's mevater. It just means he doesn't get angry. He's going to deal with this in a number of different ways, and not necessarily with kas. Just because the kas subsides, it doesn't mean that it's okay that he's mevater. An example: let's say somebody really hurts me. Let's say he steals from me. I find out somebody stole from me $100,000. They stole from me. So my first reaction is, like, I'm angry at the person. Then I realize, listen, I got to be a mentor. I'm not angry at the person, but this is about Michael, the $100,000. Like, well, let's deal with it a different way. Dealing with it with anger is not the right way to deal with it. I feel like I'm giving Musar. I'm mamish not royal. Like I have. No, I'm not saying this out of animus. Like I probably have, like, I'm dealing with things every day and all day that get me angry. I'm very annoyed, and the older I get, the worse it is. It doesn't get better. It doesn't get better. I'm annoyed. But then, so I'm just like learning this, like with you, you know. But so the point is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's, like, the anger aspect of it, which we don't even have defined yet, needs to be, that doesn't last. That's not the part that keeps on going. Hashem is not angry with us 2,000 years later, but He's not mevater either. So kol dar shloi nivda beis hamikdash v'yamav, so it's ki'ilu necher. But it's not, I don't know if it's anger. How can it be anger? Look how many chasadim that He's done for us. We're living here in Eretz Yisrael, right? It's not about anger. It's about fix it. I'm not moichel either. Fix it. Get rid of the sinas chin.
Is this anger limited to just the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people?
That's a good question.
And does it transcend between Hashem and an individual? And does it bleed off into?
I'll tell you why it might be. I don't know. I'm not. It's a good question. No, it's a good question. I just meaning. Let me rephrase it. Is this like the midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have the midah of anger with anybody, anything? Not with Jews, not with goyim, not with rabbis, not with, you know. Or is this a Jewish thing? I'm guessing here. I don't have a clear raya, but it could be that it's for sure with the Jewish people. Dahainu, we have. Like, we're married to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a different story. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu went around and offered the Torah to all the nations, we accept it. So there's a certain ava. Koyamar Hashem, zacharti lo chesed n'rayach, lechtech acharai b'midbar. We have also done certain things which have made us in the bechina of av leben. So that's a certain, you know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't forget either. He remembers that we went out of Mitzrayim. He remembers that we were B'kabel Torah. He remembers the wonderful things that we did. So I don't know that everybody else in the world could say that. So the point is like this: if you're, like, really in love with your wife, with your children, with, you know, if you're really in love, so that it doesn't mean that things aren't annoying you, but it does mean that this is a different thing. Like, you can't compare. You can't compare. You know, it's like somebody who's on the street and his kid does something terrible, so he's beating his kid. One should never hit their kids. On his second as a boss was hitting his kid. So let's say some stranger walks by and he says, "Azav tazav imay." He starts hitting your kid too. It's going to help another Jew, right? So like, what's it like? So you call the police, you know, punch the guy out. What are you doing? Touch him with, get your hands off my kid. What are you doing with my kid? What's the difference between me and you? You're hitting your kid. I'm hitting your kid. What's the difference? The difference is ava. That's the difference. The difference is that I have ava. There's a context here, and the context it makes all the difference. Oh, you have no context. You're just hitting my kid. So again, you know, nobody should hit their kids. I'm just giving a drastic. Thank God, I have 11 kids, basically all grown up. I don't think I've ever hit my kids. And they came out decent, you know. it's okay. Everything's okay, Baruch Hashem. Like, it's not a derech. And the reason is because we're talking about, because 99, at least with me, 99% of this hitting business is kas. And kas is that type of kas just unacceptable. It's like a kid runs into the street and you want to make maybe, you know, but not kas. Kamosh Matzinu, like we find Bimei Yeravam ben Yoyash, brings us to Tanakh, Sefer Malachim Beis, Yeravam ben Yoyash, over there by Yeravam ben Yoyash. Do you know in Tanakh, just tell you a little bit of an idea, that throughout the whole Tanakh, throughout the whole, let's say, Sefer Malachim, where it talks about the Malchei Yisrael, some were good, some were bad, some good, bad, keeps on going back. So in Tanakh, there's always a reference. Either he was a Melech, like David HaMelech, or he's a Melech like Yeravam ben Nevat. Like the in Tanakh, it's a very interesting if you actually read through Tanakh. There's two categories of Melachim. You're a David Melech or you're a Yeravam Melech. Huh?
Or a typical bad king.
Yeah. Like those are the two. This is not Yeravam ben Nevat, but here in Tanakh it says that Yeravam ben Yoash was like Yeravam ben Nevat. Lo holach b'derech Hashem, and it was like Yeravam ben Nevat. So we have like two models of leadership: good, bad, very black and white situation. And those are the tshuva, like Yoshiyahu, like came from a different place. Menashe maybe, like there's different. But over there the story was that Shehechzer HaKadosh Baruch Hu Gevul Yisrael v'heim hayu oivdei agolim. Here you have, usually the cause and effect is that when Klal Yisrael does bad in Tanachi terms is usually being over to Avodah Zarah. That's what the bad is, taking from the booty, which you're not allowed to take from, things like that. So usually it comes with an onesh of you lose a war. That seems to be the seder. Yet you find exceptions to the rule, where by Yeravam ben Yoash, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hechzer HaKadosh Baruch Hu Gevul Yisrael, he allowed us to reclaim land in Israel. As we were successful in our wars at that time in Eretz Yisrael. The Richei Ma'alehem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'heim hayu oivdei agolim. We were oivdei Avodah Zarah at that time. So we find a case where we were oivdei Avodah Zarah. So maybe you'll think, okay, well they'll get theirs in Shabayim, or somehow this is an Anish. No, it was Pashat, a case of HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying, all right, it's temporary insanity. I'm not going to take away Eretz Yisrael from these people because they're doing something wrong. I can see the past, I can see the present, I can see the future, as Hashem says, and I'm saying this is not like the definition of the character of Klal Yisrael. It's just a mishagas that they're going through for a couple hundred years of being over there Avodah Zarah. A couple hundred years, not a couple of minutes, a couple hundred years. Still didn't do tshuva. Imkei lama richem, says the Talmud Devora. So let's understand. Let's take a parak Tanakh and understand why Taka didn't. Why did Hashem have Rachmanos on us? Why? So the answer is it's bishvil midazu. Shloi hechezik la'ad apo. He's not machzik la'ad apo. Adarabba machlish apo. On the contrary, the Baruch takes the anger. The anger is the temporary thing. It becomes chalash, it becomes weaker. Im heyosh adayin achet kayim, even though the chet is kayim. So we have to think for a moment about, here we are, let's take my example, 2,000 years or whatever it is after the Churban Beis HaMikdash. Everyone says 2,000, not really 2,000. But let's say 2,000 years before, since the Churban Beis HaMikdash, Ba'arech, give or take 100 years or so. But, so, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu still angry? Interesting theological question. You're still angry? 2,000 years, you're still angry? And what do we have to do with them? Oh, so the answer is that we're still doing the same Avera. I'll tell you something so important, fascinating. Rav Dessler, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, Mashgiach HaGates had Mashgiach Apanovich, like card-holding Haredi. Right? I mean, it was like pretty Haredi guy. Like Rav Dessler, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. He says that he speaks it's in the Sefer. He speaks about the establishment of the state of Israel. And he says, it's so interesting. He says establishment of the state of Israel. So he said that like what is this? He says cajole hagid. It's difficult to say that it's the Shlit'a de Geula. Many people say the Kook. That's Shlit'a de Geula. The Geula is already beginning. Cajole hagid. He says we don't find all the simanim of a Shlit'a de Geula. A lot of the Gedolim of the last generation, like Rabbi Yaacov Haber, held that it was a shita of, it was a zman of ikvus of the Mashiach, not a Shlit'a de Geula. The difference is so fine. It's such a fine line. You know, why people are throwing stones at each other over this fine line, I do not understand. But it's a very fine line. But here's Rav Dessler, Rav Elchanan, like for sure something is going on. For sure something is going on. So he says, but the establishment of the state of Israel, but I'm not, the last one for getting involved in this kind of politics, I'm just saying over what Rav Dessler says, is clearly a matana from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to show us how much He loves us. Afal PK.
Wow.
So says Rav Dessler. Like whatever you want to say politically, he says. So of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us this matana. So it's like like I look at it like if you're really having a fight with somebody. And then, like let's say a wrestling match. Like you look at, you open the TV, like when you're in a hotel someplace, you open the TV and you see there's like wrestling. Let's say like they really look like they hate each other, right? But then all of a sudden you see one guy winks to the other. Like so what's like what's like like it's like we have to be noheg with like a fighting. It's a show. Like so he talks about literally this. I'm not making his example of the Hakamas Medinas Yisrael is clearly a matana from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which shows His ava, even though he says cajole hagid that it's a Shlit'a de Geula. Wow, so it changes. I mean, to me, that changed my whole thinking. Like in other words, bimanav shach, like chill. Like it's not. It's whatever the emes is. Chill. Something is going on over here. But that's not the astonishing thing that he says. He says that if you look at the Devora, this Devora that we're learning today, he says you'll understand this, because what happens is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a hanhaga of kas, which is a hanhaga of exile, golus, and when that doesn't work, then he takes another derech, and that's kanois of knisa, of like bringing everybody back together again in golus ends. So he says a chiddush that the kibbutz galios that we're experiencing, can anybody deny? Like the kibbutz galios that we're experiencing. You should go just once to watch a nefesh b'nefesh flight come in. And then, like, it's not about being a Zionist. You want to be a Zionist? I'm just like, but kibbutz galios is like an unbelievable thing. Young, old, every country. More from France today than from America. I was in Morocco, and but like it's hafla of a fellow. What's going on? He says this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is exhausted. Says the Rabbi Dessler, he's exhausted with his anger already. Let's start working with ahava. It means that when the kas doesn't work, then plan B comes in, and that's the plan of ahava. So what does this tell you? It tells you that the kas milichatchila was not the kas that we thought it was. Now you can't rely on this too much because it took a couple thousand years. Nobody's got patience for that. But or can we switch already now to avil? It's like somebody's walking out home every day. Is my wife talking to me today? Like what's going on? Like it's you can't depend on this in the short term. But it's just from a big view, a historical point of view. It's so. It tells you that lechatchila, the kas wasn't the type of kas that we think of when we think of kas. It was a technique of getting Klal Yisrael to do tshuva, and when it didn't work, because we still have Let's try another technique. L'mashal, like an av al haben. Let's try the anger technique, the richuk, the tough love. And if the tough love doesn't work, well, let's try the embrace.
But if you're a parent and you try that approach for a day, a week, the anger approach, and then you go into the more like positive, modern day, coddling approach. Okay, that's one thing, because you don't see the future. But if you're HaKadosh Baruch Hu, well, he didn't see 2,000 years ago that it wasn't going to work for 2,000 years, or maybe it didn't work.
He's not allowed to see. There's Bechira Chavshis. HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows for free choice. I don't know what Hashem sees and he doesn't see, but he allows for free choice. So the minute you say that, well, you knew it wasn't going to work, what are you doing?
But I'm saying
you can't assume.
But can we say that in fact it didn't work? Maybe it did work to a point. In other words, like the older generation, like the Rav's father, is made of a different metal than we are.
Right. Went to work with him either. But I just
so
but I don't know that you're right. I don't know one's more modern than the other. Like I always think of this. I always think I'm just giving a mashal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like Moshe Rabbeinu standing by the sneh. Like an amazing moment in the history of the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu standing by the sneh, right? God talking to man, like really clear. Hashem's talking to him. It was like that conversation is so important. It's such an important conversation because it's really like what we're talking. This meeting is about establishing the Jewish people as a nation. That's what the burning bush was all about. We're establishing one of the things he says to him, the first thing he says to him is, the first thing he says to him is take off your shoes. Which take off your shoes, I always point out is you got to start feeling, the most sensitive part of your body is your feet. While you're wearing shoes, you can walk over glass, you can walk over hot coals, you could walk over snakes, you can walk over anything when you're wearing shoes. Take off your shoes. This is not a leader. A leader of Klal Yisrael is not living in an insulated ivory tower. Like Moshe Rabbeinu, first thing I'll tell you is, when leadership, take off your shoes. That's the first thing. You got to feel every single bump, every single leg. Oh, a Jew has a problem, you got to feel it. This is a hard job. Which he didn't want. But that's why he didn't want it. First thing he tells him. He says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, they're not going to believe me. So he says to him, Moshe, Baza b'yadech, what's in your hand? So he says, a stick. Take the stick, throw it down. Nachash. Comes a snake. So Moshe Rabbeinu jumps back. Snake, ugly. It's dangerous. Everybody runs away from snakes. Then he says, okay, snake. So then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, now grab it. Don't grab it around the jugular. Grab it by the tail. Nagoya biz navai, right? Is that a lesson? Nagoya biz navai? Can say who? Biz zankoi? Just touch it. Like anywhere, touch it at the tail. Like delicate, and it turns into a Mata Elokim. Turns back into a Mata Elokim. I saw this in the Arizal, very interesting. It's spelled wrong. Maza b'yadecha should be mem hey, word 1, zayin hey, word 2. So the way it's spelled there is Maza b'yadecha. Oh, you're a good man. That's not good enough. Where is it?
Oh, it's right around there somewhere.
Oh, right around here somewhere, thanks.
Oh, it's my foot.
It's okay, we're past it, sorry. Basep b'yadecha, says the Arizal, here's a very different thing. The gematria mem zayin hey is what? 40 and 7 and 5? 52 is Ben. Ben b'yadecha. Ben b'yadecha. The Klal Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu is complaining that Klal Yisrael is not going to believe me. So he says, your whole view of Klal Yisrael is off, skewed. It's like wrong. Like what I'm putting in your hands now, what's Mata Elokim, is a ben. Baza b'yodecha. What I'm putting in your hands now is not baza b'yodecha. Berebes, baza b'yodecha. It's ben. 52 is in your hands. By the way, 52 is gematria for so many special things, all of which represent the very, very deep relationship that exists between a father and a son, or between two people. Ben, 52 is always the numbers of of closeness and relationship. So says the Arizal. Many rayas to it. One of the beauties of gematria. With a ben, it goes like this: you push it away, you throw it away. Nachash. It's mabish disgusting. Like it's mabish like you want to run away from this thing. Like leave me alone. Let's cut off this. Throw it away. So Kodesh Baruch Hu says, "Let me show you something. Just touch it anywhere. Just a little bit of ahava, and immediately don't grab it by the neck. Don't strangle it. Don't kill it. Don't step on it. Just touch it. Touch it anywhere in the tail, like fire, like minatzad. Achos biznavo, and go ahead. And what? Vayachzik. And it turned into a mata lokiv in his hand. Like such an amazing teaching of the Arizal, that the derech is, but there's two steps in this. The first step is you throw it away. It's kas, but it's a certain kind of a kas where Moshe Rabbeinu is like ready to push himself away completely from it. That's that's where most people remain. And now says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, now we're going to differentiate between the men and the boys. Like what does it mean to be a leader of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Look at your people, like your flock, like a ben. And if you're looking at it like a ben, you know that there's an underlying ahava, which is much deeper than the anger that you're displaying right now. And just touch it. Moshe Rabbeinu was Bahadur in this motion, it sounds like. Vayachzik. Hashem told Udgoya b'kotzehu. What's Udgoya?
Echos biznavo.
Echos biznavo? Vayachzik. It says earlier in Goa. But anyways, Moshe Rabbeinu did more. Machzik. This is what we're learning about. Eina Kodesh Baruch Hu Machzik. Right? Like Machzik is so, and it turned into the Matzah Elokim. A limud for Moshe Rabbeinu how to deal with Jews. It's different than anything you're used to. It's different than the Yisro people even. It's different than Midian. It's different. This is. They're going to act like really weird. They're going to act like a bunch of goyim, but lo yaminuli. But it'll come around. So it tells you again. I want to emphasize this point. It tells you again about the mafreya, about the nature of the anger that existed. Hadrabah machlishapo. This is the case. Machlishapo. We're talking about now in the middle of the chet. I'm not waiting until they start believing. I'm not waiting until the chet is over. Like Rav Dessler says, like, this didn't work, let's try that. The chazak didn't work, maybe there's a baila to the chazak working. Maybe it would be a baila if we would just get shaken up and do tshuva. That would be a nice thing. But it worked maybe in the time of Purim, right? That was Gadol Hasaras Tabas. Like sometimes in history it does work, but sometimes in history, this served us as the time of history that we're in now. I'm always fascinated to find out what time is it? Where are we in history? Where are we in history? So he says we're in the part of history which is the wink time in my language. It's a matana from HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
The what time? The
wink.
Oh, okay. It's the week time.
Wink.
But, I mean, without getting too much into that historical perspective, but the gap, if that's what he was referring to, between the Shoah and the State was like 3 years. You know, can we say that the so-called Kodesh Baruch Hu realized, okay, the Holocaust didn't work? You know,
that's exactly what he's saying.
Like within
not only that's what he's saying.
That's
what he's saying. This if I'm not mistaken, look, this chapter in Rav Dessler is a speech, a drasha that he gave in Eretz Yisrael, I believe, when Israel received a pot of ashes from the Holocaust for Devora, and he spoke about how here we are in Eretz Yisrael with the biggest simcha, the biggest matana in the world, mourning over the Efer Yisrael, which at least in our minds, in our times, is the most catastrophic thing that could happen. And you're putting it together, and you see the kas and the ava all at one time, and how the ava touches up the kas. Nobody's able to explain the Holocaust, I don't think. But what he was saying is that just like you saw the cast there, look at the Ahava here.
But they are connected.
Well, historically they certainly are.
But I'm saying, is he saying that there's two separate events?
He's saying, no, he's exactly what he's not saying. He's saying that the Ahava that we have now is showing you the nature of the Kas. And it's all one thing. And basically HaKadosh Baruch Hu is moving from one place to the other. V'hainu, this is what it says in Tehillim, Lo Netzach Yoriv, V'lo Olam Yitar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not in a constant anger, softens up. Lo Olam Yitar Datira is a little bit different than Nekama. Nekama is that when you take revenge. Yitar is when you hold this grudge. Like I just can't get over it. I just can't forgive you for this. No, not Hashem. Lo Olam Yitar. Ela Kadosh Baruch Hu misnaheg berakos. This is the key sentence there. Ela Kadosh Baruch Hu misnaheg berakos ubekashos. Sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu works rach, and sometimes he works kasha. Akol l'tuvas Yisrael, whatever is appropriate at that time. So, whatever is appropriate at that time. Sometimes barakos means, here's the deep part about this. It means that the rach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the kasha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu are all coming from the same place. That's what it means. It's all unified. It's only Hashem Echad. So, harakos, not just the rakos, not just the kashas, harakos, v'akashas, and we don't have to feel insecure with the rach. What we have to do is, like, oh, it's not real because there's been so much kasha. No, it's all one thing. Just always all the rach and the kasha, always one thing. We're supposed to do tshuva. It's as simple as that.
Same
thing, exactly. I was thinking, this is just a tangent, but I was just thinking about it, like, like this ISIS is like, people are really freaking out about this. Everybody, I mean, why not? We walk around beheading people and everything. It's really freaky. And they seem to be making, okay, like we got them on one little shtetl over there. They seem to be making pretty serious progress, and I don't know where everybody's in denial, like coming closer and closer to Ramat Beit Shemesh. It's a pretty scary thing, no question about it. And they're, like religion is a terrible thing because it's not just that, but they're pretty serious about this, and they're pretty, But I was just thinking, like, it's so important to keep it in perspective that, like, they're not the first ones that, the Nazis, also went country to country, much more powerful, with much more ammunition, with many more people than they had, and bigger sinna and propaganda. The propaganda machine was much bigger, and the world really wasn't against them even for too long of a time, But Kadosh Baruch Hu, Kadosh Baruch, like they had their Zman, they had their Zman, but it's not like they took over the world. They didn't. The Romans, were I think 400 years. Like that was a pretty, there was a pretty serious. It was a pretty serious thing. I imagine people lived at that time. That was like a reality that wasn't going to end. It was today Romans are making pizza. I mean, like it's not a the Greeks, Babylonians, like all the only thing that stood the test of time is the Tanakh and Daniel, where he says this is going to come, and this is going to go, and this is also in there. Like it's not. Look, it could be. It's a frightening thing, but I'm just saying that like one has to put it also into the perspective of history. That's all I'm saying. The perspective of history is that Tov, and that I think right now Kadosh Baruch Hu is showing us a certain Ava. So I think we're in good times with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hashem. I mean, not just Eretz Yisrael, but a renaissance of yeshivos and shuls and kihilos and Bezos Hashem. The only thing to do really is tshuva.
Not only is he showing us his Ava, but he's showing us how to do Ava with each other. That's why the wars, brought us together.
So just a thought I wanted to. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu misnayig barakos ubakoshes. That's Jewish history. Barakos ubakoshes hakol. But this is what we need to understand. Hakol l'toivas Yisrael. Everything is l'toivas Yisrael. Wednesday we're going to bring this to our midos. V'zu midah, which is the first line. V'zu midah ru'uya la'adam lehisnayig ba im chaveroi. This is the way to be. I mean, in other words, the tzelem elikim. Let me just remind you of what we said here at the very beginning of this learning term of Devora. That the nature of the tzelem elikim. Why are we b'tzelem elikim? Why are we created b'tzelem elikim? We're created b'tzelem elikim because the whole purpose of the creation is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to do tov in this world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to do hatova. Teva hatov l'meitiv. Lashon the Arizal. Teva hatov l'meitiv. So we who are b'tzelem elikim, become the agents of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world. It was HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world in order to be meitiv. Here we are. We're your meitiv agents. So in perforce, we have to have these kochos, which seem totally unrealistic because we're influenced by a standard which is not the standard by a standard which says we're only human. But what we're understanding is that Tzelem Elikim is that only human is a very, very big thing. It was only human. Only human means to be B'Tzelem Elikim. So it means that we have kochos, hidden kochos, that we really don't we have. So especially, I just want to stress, especially when it comes to this, because when it comes to anger, this is where a person feels like, okay, I could be, I could be kind, I could give tzedakah, but this anger thing is really out of control by definition. It's by definition, it means being out of control. It's very difficult to, but it is b'koach of a person to be b'tzelem elikim. If it's b'koach of a person b'tzelem elikim, kedai for us to learn, I think, how to do it. So the first thing we learned today is that the very nature of the anger has to change. The very nature of the anger. How do you do that? Further afield. But the very nature of the anger has to be not an anger that's coming from hate, not an anger that's coming from gaiva, which is usually where anger comes from, gaiva. So I think I just leave you with this thought. Rabbi Yerucham says, Rabbi Yerucham is like a big Balmusar in Europe. He says that anger comes from kas, comes from gaiva. And he says that if a person is really angry, you're really the middle of a temper tantrum, you're really angry, and then somebody knocks on the door, which you really have respect for. I think of somebody who you really have respect for. So he knocks on the door. So, where'd the anger go? The answer is, he says, it's immediately subsided. Might be still upset, but you're not going to keep on screaming. You're not going to keep on yelling. All of a sudden, you're in control again. Like makara, what happens is when there's somebody who you really respect, your gaiva goes down. Like when you're standing in front of somebody who you really have covet for, you're less of a bal gaiva than with that person. I say, once the gaiva goes down, the kas goes down too. So he proves from here that kas and gaiva are seriously connected. A person, there's a certain gaiva of thinking that this is my situation, I need to be in control of the situation, this is me, I was offended. A lot of eyes in that, a lot of eyes in that situation of anger. So if you pull out the one letter I and you knock it out, anivus, so that's probably the first step to subsiding kas. That's something to look at in Rabbi Yerucham. But if you understand that coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's never an I. What's HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'zakis Yisrael? It's all about teva toiv lebeitiv. So there is no I per se. So therefore, the nature of the anger is an anger with humbleness. So it could be that the derech to work on kas is to work on gaiva or on ivus, as it is. Okay, finish our Wednesday.